Hello, and welcome to Of All the Places podcast. My name is John Wick. Right there is...
I'm Katie.
Katie K. Ben, the Juice, all the other things we call Ben when we call him things.
His 4,000 nicknames.
Yeah, he's Ben today. This is your professional side. Katie, I felt old this morning.
Oh, God.
I don't know
In a
why.
good way?
Well, no, I think here's what happened.
Oh.
I looked in the mirror, and usually that's enough to feel old. But I noticed that there was some hair coming out of my nose.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And thank God you guys aren't old enough to I've got 10 years on you, right? Give or take.
More.
But
than that.
hair's going to start migrating.
Is it going up my nose? Coming out my nose?
It just migrates.
It just starts. Well,
and so you got to just FYI, be prepared.
I have 5 gray hairs, John.
I don't know.
5.
Yeah.
I can see them.
Time stops for no one.
You know what? Growing old is a blessing.
Not everyone gets to.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you.
And there's a lot of we're gonna be cool old people.
Yeah, we are.
Just think about that. I'm here for it.
If we can mentor the youths.
They're gonna hate us. They're gonna be like, "Shut up, you old folks."
Old fogies, go trim your nose hair. Oh my gosh. So yeah, that brings us to our next guest.
Oh my cow! Because we do have to get into it.
Katie, we have Maggie Dallen here in the studio today, and she is first of all, she's super cool, but we have a Hallmark movie in the house today.
For real, it was on the Hallmark Channel in December, airing on the 30 days of Christmas.
Yeah.
Countdown.
That is pinnacle.
No, I'm gonna be starstruck. I don't think I'm gonna know what to do.
So she's a sweetheart. Maggie Dallen is an author, and she writes under several different pen names, I believe. I don't know too much about her other than she has written the script for an actual Hallmark movie. She lives here in town, and she walks among us as if she's a local. I mean, because she is, but my gosh.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I just was on our website earlier because I like to do a little pre-show stalking.
Cool.
And I need to start reading all of these books yesterday. Fake Dating My Rockstar Roommate. Are you sign? I'm dead. I'm serious as a heart attack. Sign me up. I'm so ready.
Gosh.
The Not So Perfect Second Chance. I mean, I need to know what these are about. What does this say? Miss Rebecca's Rebellious Viscount.
Ooh.
Catch me later. I'm going to be reading all these books.
Yeah, we'll have to have a follow-up.
We have to.
Just a review session.
Yes.
Oh
I can't wait.
Yeah. So Maggie Dallen on Of All the Places podcast. I can't wait to get in her mind and see what this is all about.
I think I'm just going to cheese super hard the whole time because it's she's basically a celebrity.
She totally is. We get to talk to her.
I can't wait.
We're hanging out with her. All right.
Of all the places, of all the places, of all the places, why here?
Oh my gosh, Maggie Dallen.
Here I am.
I want you to stick with this line of thought just for one hot minute.
Okay.
You, in my mind, you are proof that aliens walk among us.
I'm just going to take that in a positive way.
Well,
I guess.
here's what I mean. It's silly, but you're cool, and you're just kind of one of us, and you're just walking around Butte. You're going shopping at the stores we go shopping at. You're putting your pants on one at a time, I think.
Yeah.
And you've written a Hallmark movie.
Yes, I did.
And you just exist among us.
That's insane.
Isn't that the coolest thing ever?
It's so cool.
Oh, thanks, guys. I think I've gotten to the point where it's no longer very shocking at all. So I'm I don't see it that way, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
What was this winter like for you?
It was crazy this past one, especially. So it's been a weird year. It's just been craziness ever since I got the news that I was going to have my script bought and made. It all happened so quickly. because there was this crazy timeline. Like one of the actors he is a star of a TV show that was about to film. So they had this tiny little window which they could film this movie. So they're like, we basically need to start like yesterday. So from the moment I sold it, it was just this crazy whirlwind of, negotiations and conversations. And then my husband and I flew to the set and got to be there for it. And then it came out this year. Like this all happened between this past March and then it aired in December. So it was just like so crazy whirlwind. And,
I bet.
Yeah. Things happen quickly, apparently, in the Hallmark world. So I learned that the hard way. I was like, oh my gosh.
Well, I guess when things line up, like it's go time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
It's a lot of hurry up and wait. It was kind of like we were waiting around for like waiting. And then it was like, go,
Mm-hmm.
So apparently that's the way it works.
Oh, that's cool. We're going to dive into that more.
Okay,
'cause
yeah.
I could look at Katie's face. She's just like, can't.
I'm so excited.
When we were talking about podcast guests for this season, I was like, I'm pretty sure a neighbor of ours like is like written a Hallmark movie, and she's like, shut up.
I'm pretty sure my jaw was on the floor. I was like,
Yeah.
huh? Like, really?
Yeah, it's super fun.
We need to interview her.
Uh-huh. So this
That's
is
awesome.
yes.
Well,
So-
I'm super excited to be here. So
yeah,
that's
this is great. So let's back up. I kind of want to get like your whole writing background, where you grew up and all that sort of stuff. And then
sure.
then let's dive into how we can all become Hallmark movie stars.
Yeah.
Yeah. How's that
If
sound?
that's everyone's dream, yes, let's do it.
I mean,
I'm not sure.
I'm due for Hot Frosty 2.
I mean, I think you'd be
Oh.
a better option than poor Ted. I don't know what they did to him. It was
Yeah.
Ted from Schitt's Creek,
Schitt's
and he
Creek,
just
I think,
didn't
yeah.
quite look like we're used to seeing him.
Something was, I don't know.
And we love Ted.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you doing to poor Ted?
So I'll do some
yeah.
sit-ups before next
Okay.
March.
Yeah, work on that. You got this. Because it'll move quick. Once
that's
you get
right.
that Hot Frosty 2 going,
Yeah.
it'll move quick.
Yeah. Filming in
gosh.
March. Get ready.
Yeah. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Allentown, Pennsylvania, which is kind of near Philly. And I lived there till I was 18. Then I lived in New York for a long time. And then San Francisco for about 5 years. And then Montana.
New York proper?
Yeah, New York City. I went to college there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then I stayed for a long time, and then I met my husband Travis in San Francisco, and he was living and working there too, and he grew up in Whitehall, so people are always like, "How did you get here?" And
Yeah.
I'm like, that's why. That's the connection right there.
Yeah, especially being a city girl.
Yeah, no, I know.
Feels like-
Yeah, but by the time Travis and I were we were just ready to leave San Francisco, and by that point, I'd been living in the big cities for 18 years, and I was kind of like, I'm ready to try something different. My whole adult life was in these real fast-paced cities, were super expensive, and everything moved really quickly. And I was like, I'm ready to see what life is like outside. And not only that, but we were talking about having a kid, and we were like, it seems much more doable anywhere else than
That's
San
fair.
Francisco. That's when we decided, we're like, okay, let's do Montana. We've been going like at least once or twice a year since we started dating, to visit his family. And so it seemed like the logical place to go. And we started in Bozeman. Then we're in Ennis for a year. And then we've been in Butte for the last, I want to say 6 years, 7 years, something like that.
That sounds about right.
I don't know. I'm asking you,
Yeah.
I'm like, when did I move
Looking at
here,
me
John?
like, I think so.
Sounds about right. Sounds legit. Yeah, we'll go with that.
Because, we were in our house. You literally live right around the corner from us.
Yeah, we're really close.
And I think you guys moved in a year or two after we moved uptown.
There
so
you go. Yeah.
that math works in my head.
That works. Yeah.
It's
I
good
gauge
enough.
everything by my son's age. I'm like, I think we moved in. He was like 2. And he's 8. Yep, 6.
Yeah,
We'll
that
say
works.
6. Yeah, it adds up.
And how were you always writing?
Yeah.
Little Maggie running around.
Yeah, I was. Always, I grew up loving to write. Actually, my friend and I, I'm still friends with a lot of my friends from back home, like friends who've been friends since kindergarten, one of whom still has this notebook that she found where we wrote a book together when we were in 5th grade. It's the worst. I mean, it's obviously it's a
That's
5th
so funny.
grader,
Yeah,
but
but
she
that's
found this
amazing.
notebook of us, like our handwritten, like really big curly letters, like, and it was pretty awful, but we had a really good laugh reading it. And I was like, oh my God, I've kind of forgotten about it. So yeah, so I guess I can say I wrote my first book in 5th grade. I'm not sure that counts, but it was,
I don't know. You got to start somewhere.
we got to start somewhere. And then I actually went to college for a theater degree. I got really into acting and the arts when I was in high school. And I think looking back, I think it's just because that was the only real opportunity. Like I went to a pretty small high school, and theater was like the big arts outlet there. So I latched onto it.
That's cool.
But then when I went to college and I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to keep doing theater. But one thing that I learned very quickly going to college in New York City is that maybe I don't have the personality type for
That's a
that.
different
yeah,
level of
I was
theater.
like, I was no longer a big fish in the small pond that
Right.
was my tiny little high school, So I realized pretty quickly that I'm like, oh yeah, I do not love that whole like the competitiveness and just it wasn't for me. I wilted very quickly.
That's a big swing.
Yeah, and but the thing that happened was I went because I was at this artsy school in New York. All these other opportunities opened up that I wasn't even aware of. So it was kind of like my eyes were open to all the different arts, including writing and like novel writing and whatever. So I started writing books for real, like not, let's pretend I didn't write that 5th grade book. let's say that doesn't count as the first one. I started writing romance novels because that's what I've been reading since I was like 12 years old. So I started writing romance novels. And I finished my first one the year after I graduated, which was 2002. So I just dated myself big time right there. But
Wow.
yeah, so I finished my first book in 2002 and I've been writing steadily ever since some might say compulsively. Like I think I've published like 200 books at this point.
Oh my
Oh,
God.
yeah, under different pen names and things.
Oh
So.
wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, and I was a ghostwriter for a while, so that accounts for some of them. It was paid the bills, and yeah. So I've been writing for a really long time now. And
And
then
is that about the time you realized you're pretty good at writing
when I
in college when you started compulsively writing?
yeah, no, in college I think I still I didn't think I was good at it at all in college, and it took me many years to get over the insecurity of and I didn't want to share. So I was writing and just not showing anybody what I was doing, which I think is a pretty common thing, right? When people are new to any art form, you don't really want to share it with the world right away. And I was bartending, and I remember this guy came in. He was watching this soccer game, and I was a daytime bartender in New York at this like sports bar. And this guy was like alone. And so I ended up talking, as you do when you're alone in a bar bartending. I was just like making chit chat with this guy. And I ended up telling him, of all people, this stranger, that I'd finished my first book like a year before. And he was like, you finished a book and you're just sitting on it? Like, what are you going to do with it? I was like, nothing. Like, I was just happy to have this book. And I was like proud of it. And he got so mad at me. And he was just, and he was like, and in hindsight, I'm so grateful to this guy because he was like, look, my friend's fiance, I don't know, it was some connection that he had to some agent. And he was like, you have to email her this book. And I was like, and he'd never read it. He didn't know he had never met me before, and I've never seen him since. He was just some like miracle guy who came into the bar and gave me a good swift kick to the butt.
Yeah.
And was like, you are not allowed to just sit on it if you finish a book. And so I did. I sent it to the agent and she liked it. And suddenly I had a New York agent, and I was like, what is happening in my life? And yeah, so things started moving from there. But it was another 15 years before I actually made like a dime off of writing. So it was a long
That sounds
haul.
a
So it
lot
was,
like the creative industry.
Yeah, it
Don't
was.
You think? Wouldn't you say in music is probably a lot like that?
Oh yeah.
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 Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. I think like I'm glad I had that little taste of success by getting an agent right out of the gate, because I'm not sure that I would have stuck with it if I didn't have that one thing to hold on to be like, oh, somebody thinks that I'm a good writer. One person thinks I'm a good writer. And I think that's all anybody needs sometimes, is just like one person who believes in you, and then that can take you a long way, But yeah, so I held on to that for 15 years. And then finally I started selling books, and I got a book deal, and things started happening. But yeah, it was a long 15 years of, day jobs and threatening to quit and not quitting. So wanting to quit, not being able to
Sure.
quit,
So you're writing this whole time,
Yeah,
just kind of the
nonstop, and
Yeah.
submitting and querying and doing the whole thing.
what is
And,
what?
yeah.
Can you explain that process just to someone who has no idea what?
Yeah.
Like me, I have no.
Yeah.
What
I
it
have
means
no
to be
idea,
doing
yeah.
all that stuff. So at that time, my process has changed a bunch thanks to self-publishing. The advent of Kindle has
Oh,
really
sure.
changed my life. But for a long time there, so when I started, the first one was in 2002 that I finished, and at that point there was no such thing as Kindle or self-publishing. So for a very long time, I was doing it the tried and true way, which is you write a book, you start querying agents in order to get through to the gatekeepers of the trad pub houses, the traditional publishing houses. And so I had so many close calls over those 15 years. I had like a almost deal here, and then they decided to cancel that imprint. And I had a like, oh, we love this, send us more. And then they ghosted me. It's just, again, I'm sure this sounds very familiar in the music industry. I think this is how it is in all the creative world. It's kind of like you have a lead here, a lead there. But to make it actually come to fruition it just takes everything lining up in the perfect way. And then also maybe like a bolt of lightning and miracles. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think hope.
Yeah.
I run on hope is my gasoline.
Yeah.
Right? It's just a nugget of that, and it'll keep
Right.
me going for a while. to
Yeah,
get through a lot of
exactly.
hard
I feel
times.
like there's that one person who will like validate you, or you'll get some kind of like a little hint of success, and you're like, okay, that's going
can
to tide
do
me
this.
over 3 more years, until I get the next hit, like of something. Yeah, and then it changed for me so I got actually like my first ebook deal. It was with this company, Kensington, they're a publisher, and they had like an ebook first deal. It was a really bad deal in hindsight. But I ended up doing like 6 books with them. Not their fault, just I didn't know anything about it. So they're a perfectly legit company, but I was just so eager to sell anything, and I didn't know what I was doing. And but while I was publishing those books with them, I started dabbling in self-publishing. And so it was, this was around like 2014, 2015, like very early days of self-publishing. Like I think Kindle first came out in like 2011 or something, somewhere around there.
Right.
So it was like the Wild West still. Like, it was its own, like people were just, it was just craziness. There were really like no rules and whatever. And so it was the early days, and I started dabbling in it. And then by the time I was cutting close to the end of my traditionally published deal, I realized that like, oh no, I much prefer having all the control and making all
Right.
the money. I mean, let's be honest, that helps a lot too. Because what I realized is I think there's this misconception in the publishing world that people are like, I talk to a lot of new authors all the time, and there's this idea that if you get a good trad pub deal, they're going to market your books for you. And you can just sit there and write. And it's like everyone's dream, right? To
Yeah.
just sit in on their couch and write. And then somebody else sells the books and you just make all the money. And that's just not how it is. I mean, I'm sure there's some outlier cases where, if there's some like wonderkind who gets all of the money and they get this great budget from the marketing team. But really, in reality, most new, especially if it's your first book and you're new and you don't have a name yet, you don't have a reader fan base yet, you're expected to pull your weight. You have to do your own marketing if you want it to sell. And so I figured out pretty early on that I'm like, well, if I'm going to have to sell this anyways, if I'm going to have to be doing all that part which I thought I was going to be able to avoid, because I'm quite the introvert. Not that you could tell right now by the way I chat on you, but I don't like selling. When I first started, at least I didn't like selling. But then I kind of realized I'm like, if I'm going to have to do that, I might as well be making all the money and having the control and putting out what I want to put out and on my timeline. And yeah, so that's when things changed for me, because then I turned it into a full-time business. And
Sure.
yeah.
Did you have any weird jobs in the meantime?
Oh man, I've had so many weird jobs. So many weird jobs. I mean, yeah, I've had a lot that were in the industry. Like I did a lot of, like I said, ghostwriting and editing and things. And some of the ghostwriting jobs were just like insane. It was like, because I just said yes to anything. So it was like, can you write a dragon shifter menage, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yep, sure thing.
Figure it out as we
So
go.
one week I'd be writing that, and the next I'd be writing some like, nonfiction thing for some businessman. It was just like, what am I doing this week? Okay. So that was kind of fun. I mean, when I first started out, the funny thing was when I first moved to San Francisco, I was so desperate for money. I drove out there and I had all this money in savings that I thought would be enough. And I did not take into consideration the fact that my car would break down twice. Like all these crazy
Life.
things kept happening. Yeah, life
Uh-huh.
happened. So I get to San Francisco and I'm just desperate for a job. And so I showed up. I was applying to anything and everything on Craigslist. And I was just like, I'll take any job. Especially, I would always check the writing section first, for writing jobs. So I went through this phase there where I actually took a job to be like a princess at birthday parties and things.
No way.
So yeah, and
I
so
thought that just happens in movies.
yeah, and so like I actually had to go to training, like Prince's training camp, like and so And at the same time, so I actually had, like, I can do balloon animals. I don't want to brag to anybody, but I can do, like, because I had to go to this training camp where I had to, like, learn how to do all these things. And I was like, okay. So I was willing to do it because I just needed a paycheck, whatever, you know. I was like, sure, yay, I'm a princess now. But then at the same time, I was still applying to all these random writing jobs. And one of them was, it was for like a sports writing job. And I applied because I applied to everything and anything that was writing related. I just wanted anything writing related. And I show up. And now the one thing you should probably know about me is I know nothing about sports. Like nothing, like less than nothing about sports. And so I show up and this guy, and it was this real old school, it was a newswire. And it was this real old school guy, like think, oh my God, I'm going to blank on his name. Was that old? Anyway, never mind. Oh, I won't go there. But he was just like really cool, like gruff old man, you know. And he's like, okay, you're here for the sports writing gig. I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay, we just ask everyone to take this real basic test on local sports things. First of all, I just moved to San Francisco. I didn't even know any of who the
It's
teams
like the name
were.
of the local
Yeah,
team. Like,
he's
I
like,
know
who's
nothing.
our baseball team? I'm like, it's not the Yankees. I don't know. That's all I got. I was and in some of them, it was like all stuff that anyone who knows sports would probably be able to answer. But I started just making up answers because I didn't want to admit defeat. So I just start guessing. It was like, what does RM, what's that baseball thing where it's like RM something?
RBI?
Yes,
yeah,
RBI.
yeah.
Yeah. I was like, what does that stand for? And I'm like, running back infield. Like I was just like making stuff up for every answer. And I was having fun with it. I was like making myself laugh by the end because I was just like, this is I'm obviously not getting the job. So I was like making things up to make myself laugh. I think I put like the Gryffindors were like I don't know, it was so silly. And so at the end, the guy was like, he looks at it and he was just like, what are you doing here? Like, and he was so nice about it. He sat down across from me, was like, be honest with me, like, clearly you don't want to write a sports writing job. So what are you doing in my office? And I was like, I'm desperate. I just want to write. And I'm like, you know, had a little bit of a meltdown on the man. I'm just like, I just want to be a writer. You know? It's like super
Anything.
professional of me. And I was like, man, I just want a job and I just want to write. And I'm doing this princess gig, but it's not really covering all my bills. And so I was being really just like real with him. And he was like, okay, I'll tell you what. By the end, he was actually like laughing as he was like reading over the answers and stuff. And he was just like, okay, I'll tell you what. I'll give you our proofread. We're also hiring a proofreading position. So take the test for that. And I did, and I passed. And then he was like, you know, and if any reporting gigs open up, like regular, not sports writing things, he's like, we'll keep you in mind. We can start training you to do that. So that is how, for a little bit of time, I was a princess and then working for a newswire and a reporter. I was a princess reporter. And yeah, that was one of the weirder times of my life. And I quickly quit the princess gig because then a reporting gig opened up and they trained me. And so then I was a breaking news reporter for a little while in San Francisco.
Well, being a princess is hard work.
Yeah.
Real
You have to
hard
deal with
work.
kids? I mean,
that alone.
like,
And
give me
make the
breaking
balloon
news any day. I
animals?
was very like having to deal with temper tantrums, you know? But yeah, and then breaking news was, I did that for like 3 years there while I was also writing my romance novels and doing all this stuff. But yeah, I think I'm much better suited to romance novels than hard-hitting breaking news. I was like, I'm very quick to cry. So no one wants me to be the first one on a crime scene. I'm just like, I don't know.
You're making it worse, miss.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
go-
Exactly. So I think we all discovered that the real fit for me was in romance writing, but it took a long time to get that to pay the bills. So you do what you have to do, you know?
That's exactly right. You make balloon animals.
Yeah, you do what you gotta do.
Yeah, you'd be a princess reporter. Amazing.
Talk to me about the romance novels.
Yeah. Well, that's my favorite.
Yeah. How do you even like? It's not probably something that you've chosen.
It was what I chose, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. It was. So when I first started off, my very first real book, aside from the 5th grade one, was a YA, so like teen, if we don't know what YA, what young adult, like fantasy romance novel. In hindsight, it was super derivative of Harry Potter and a lot of other things, but it had like a little bit of romance to it. That was my very first thing. So my first love is really like YA romance, and I still write that actually. And that's kind of how I got into it. And then, yeah, some of my first books after that were romances. I grew up reading them. Like, I don't know if you guys remember this chain called Walden Books, but it was I think it's out
Oh,
of
yeah, yeah.
business now,
Mm.
but
Like
it was in the mall near
Like
our
a brick and
house.
mortar. Right?
Yeah, it was a brick and
Mhm.
mortar thing. And I think they're out of business now, or at least they are around us. But I used to go there. It was my favorite place to go. I was a big reader, obviously. And that was my favorite place to go. My mom would just like let me loose in Walden Books. And it was like, my happy place. And I remember this one day there was a YA section and I loved YA. And somebody had misplaced one of the Harlequin, it was like a silhouette or Harlequin. If anyone's a romance reader, you guys are looking at me like, what are you talking about? It's like,
Well, I'm getting
just
into
as
it
like
after this.
yeah, it's a classic. It's one of the classic publishers of romance. But I didn't know at the time. I was like 12 or something, and somebody had misplaced it in the YA, and I bought it thinking it was a YA book, and I have never looked back. I was like in love with this whole. It was a mystery romance or something, and it wasn't super spicy and whatever. So I didn't even even after I read it, I still didn't realize that I was reading like quote unquote romance novels. But that was kind of my gateway drug into the world of romance novels, and so. Yeah, I've always loved them. I think, they get a bad rap, but I think they are and they are formulaic. I'm not gonna lie. They're, it's a formulaic kind of thing, but I don't think they're any more formulaic than any other genre fiction. Like if you pick up a whodunit, you know that at the end you're gonna know who done it. you know? And if you pick up a romance novel, you know that there's gonna be like a happy ending for the couple. But it's other than that, there, you can play within the boundaries, So, and there's so many subgenres of it that it's always kept me in the field just because when I get tired of one, there's so many ways you can go. Like I write historical romance. I've written steampunk romance. I've written YA romance. I've written, like I said before, when I was ghostwriting, I was writing all kinds of crazy, everything under the sun, But there's there's like sci-fi romance. There's paranormal romance. There's so many ways you can go that I think for me it's just a great field to be in because you can do so much under that one label, So
Yeah, I had no idea.
yeah, I know it's a whole world.
It is.
It's a whole world to itself. Yeah.
I just finished reading The Fourth Wing.
Oh yes, that
Yeah.
totally counts as a
Dug it.
Yeah,
I
it's
did.
great. Right?
Okay, that has been recommended to me so many times. I just need to do it.
Yeah, you can borrow mine.
Okay, great. Bring it to work.
It's so much fun, right? And that counts. That's technically it's romance. I mean, people. Yeah, it's a
Well,
romance.
it got steamy.
It
There was
gets
some steam in
steamy.
there.
I know,
and I
yeah.
knew you were coming on the show because we had invited you at that point, and I was like, oh no. It gets juicy.
It really
like-
does. I think
Maggie, let's talk about the juice.
I know, yeah, that one for sure. I saw this guy at the airport reading it, and like he was in the early stages and looked really into it, but he was like kind of this old man with like a business suit. And I'm like, I don't think he realizes when he picked
Quite
up
what
like
he's getting into.
I don't know that he knows what he's getting into here, but yeah, it gets pretty darn steamy. Yeah.
Yeah, the one thought I had, because I had you in mind, especially during those parts, it sounds as weird as, how many different ways can you say the same thing? Like,
Yeah.
you've got to be able to creatively talk about a kiss
Over and
200
over
different
again.
times.
Yeah, yeah. But I think that's like we were talking about before with like formula. I think that's kind of, for me, that's where the fun is figuring out how to be original within the confines of the genre, or the structure. I know we haven't gotten to the whole screenwriting part yet here, but one of the things I love about screenwriting is that it is such a tight structure. Like there's really very little room. If you got like 100 pages, but I'm sure you've seen a script and it's all so much white space because it's like dialogue. So there's very little room to get across. But like you look at a movie and look at how much people manage to get across in 100 pages of mostly white space. Like it's kind of crazy to me. So I find like the challenge of working within confines to be like very fulfilling. Like I love that. And I like that in, even there's tropes that are just done over and over and over again in the romance world, like brother's best friend or, enemies to lovers. Like these are very common tropes. And you could say, it's like, yeah, how many ways can you do the thing? But if you watch any TV show or movie or whatever, you'll see those tropes done over and over and over again. And the really good ones are the ones who find a fresh spin on it and they find a way to, to make it original, even though it's something that's been done a million times over. Like there's some famous quote about how like there are no new stories, like we're all telling the same stories over and over again. It's all like the hero's journey. And, there's a certain structure that we're all used to, whether we realize it or not. We all kind of expect the same thing. Like if you picked up a thriller and there was not some twist in the third act, you would be so pissed, right?
Yeah,
I would be
something
really
wouldn't feel right.
yeah, you'd be like, this is a disappointment. You might not even be able to say why it's a disappointment, but so there's, I think, all readers and viewers and consumers of any kind of media, we have expectations of like what a story should be, and if it doesn't have that, so I don't know, sorry, I can go off for hours on that topic, so I'll stop myself right there. I find it fascinating though, like what our expectations are, and then how to kind of, and then sometimes I feel like people, they do a really great job of thwarting those expectations, and then we're like, oh wow, they did something so fresh and beautiful, but sometimes we just want what we want, like. Like I've had anxiety issues my whole life, like real bad. Like I used to have panic attacks when I was in first grade and stuff. So like, I think for me, I was always drawn to romance because of the fact that I know that there's going to be the happy ending. So there's no, there's some part of me that like, I'm reading for pleasure and I'm reading to relax at the end of the day. And there's something, no matter how high the stakes are, no matter what happens, I know that at the end of this, I'm guaranteed to be, I'm going to be okay. So I don't know. I think that's why, for me personally, romance is, a fit.
I mean, I just feel like the world needs more joy and love.
Yeah.
Same.
And goodness.
Same. When I first started off, I used to be real self-deprecating about it. I used to be really like, oh, it's just silly romances. I just write these cheesy romances. And then one day I was like, you know what? If I can make someone smile and forget their troubles for like an hour, I've done something good with my life, and I'll just accept that. You know what I mean? Like I might not be changing the world in any huge way, but part of me is a little like, God, life is hard. Read a romance novel.
I personally think that changing 1 hour of someone's day is changing the world.
Well, I like that way of looking at it. I like that. Yeah. I mean, I think that's why romance authors do what we do, right? You just want to make someone smile. Give them a happy ending that they may not be getting in their life right now, So,
well, I mean, the happy endings, that's just a movie thing, really, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Like love and life, and that's work.
This whole reality thing.
I know.
For the birds.
Over it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Katie, do me a favor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Close your eyes for a sec. Take a journey with me. You're out on the sidewalk of 5518. Maybe you're taking in one of those beautiful new window displays, soaking it in, making sure that it's got that Katie magic.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful day. The sun is shining, and there's a slight breeze. But then you take a big, deep breath because you're proud of yourself. And that's the moment when you notice a hint of that familiar scent that often dances between the buildings of Uptown Butte. Then you hear it. And you know where I'm going with this, right? Oh, Juice, hit me with that. Rip it, dunk it, eat it. Rip it, grip it, dunk it, eat it. Yes, Katie, you guessed it. We are supported by our friends over at Pork Chop John's.
Oh, PCJs. Nothing beats a loaded pork chop sandwich. Except maybe I really just hammer down those pork nuggets. I can't help it. I love those things.
They're so good.
They're so good. They're addicting. And then I have that jingle stuck in my head for the next 2 days.
Grip it, it's so worth it. It's so worth it.
So good.
Pork Chop John's is home to the original pork chop sandwich. It was first opened in 1932.
Ugh.
And then the Orzati family took it over in 1969. Those guys are just the best. I'd say they had some big shoes to fill, but maybe it's like more like they've got a big pork chop sandwich to eat. I don't know. But just know that PCJ's is in some very good hands.
And I just learned they wholesale all over the northern part of the country.
It's an operation.
Montana, Wyoming, North and South Dakota, Idaho. For you and us to get our PCJ fix, there's 2 locations in Butte. The Uptown Restaurant at 8 West Mercury Street has a sweet, old school counter and the sweetest little walk-up window.
Oh, I love that.
I love the window. Mm-hmm. And then the downtown location with a full dining room and the drive-through, because sometimes I just can't get out of my car. And that's at 2400 Harrison Ave.
And feel free to stop at either. Get your pork chop sandwich, get those pork nuggets that Katie's gonna hammer, and then you go and you rip it, grip it, rip it, grip it, dunk it, eat it.
We are thrilled to be supported by the one, the only, the legendary M&M Bar and Grill.
Dun, 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 dun.
Did you know that if you're listening to this episode right now on its release date, which is a Thursday, you could pop in your earbuds, waltz down to 17 North Main Street in Uptown Butte, and listen to us while you enjoy our $20 tenderloin dinner. Every Thursday is the M&M's steak night, which includes fries or a baked potato and grilled Texas toast. Oh my God, I'm such a sucker for Texas toast. That's a lot of bang for your buck.
Yeah, I tell you what, my go-to meal at the M&M, the King of Clubs club sandwich. Now, I'm going to tell you how spoiled I am for just a hot minute here. The M&M is literally 20 feet from my desk. But, I'll just do the waltzing. I'll go down to the M&M. They'll whip me up a King of Clubs right in front of me while I sit at the counter and that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And they've got some killer merchandise from their Long Live the M&M shirts to some sweet vintage throwbacks that I know 5518s had a hand in creating.
That was a fun one. We got a picture from an old-timey hat. We rebuilt that thing and it is back to life, just like the M&M. It's such a fun design. So eat at the icon, and then you can take home a little piece of that Butte history, right?
You got it. That's the M&M Bar and Grill at 17 North Main Street in Uptown Butte.
We are supported by Casa Grande's Steakhouse. My goodness, you can't beat that hand-cut Rocky Mountain beef with that perfect amount of signature Casa Grande seasoning. Just let me dive into one of those petite fillets. You got to go medium rare with that, Katie. It's literally a religious experience. What's your go-to meal at Casa Grande's?
The Arts spicy cream sauce
Yes.
pasta. That is like crack. I'm
sure.
totally obsessed.
Like I said, religious experience. But I mean, the whole menu is truly off the charts. I'm talking made-to-order pastas, chicken, seafood, of course. We can't say Casa Grande Steakhouse without sushi night. If you miss that, you're straight up missing out. Every Thursday, sushi night. Thank us later for that. Casa Grande Steakhouse, you'll literally never be disappointed.
And you'll never leave hungry.
For sure. You should actually just order a to-go box with your meal. Casa Grande's is located inside the historic Bertoglio building at 801 South Utah Avenue in Uptown Butte. Casa Grande Steakhouse, where you'll always be welcomed as a part of the family. I was going to ask you about New York to San Francisco. That feels like a big jump.
Yeah.
Did anything create that or curiosity?
Yeah. That was a real low point in my life. I'd been in New York for 13 years, and I was just in one of those real bad places where it wasn't long after this recession where I lost my job. And I was back to waitressing, which is fine, except that I felt like a major step back. And I'd broken and gotten out of a long-term relationship, and I was living in this horrible studio apartment in Brooklyn. And I actually saw a drive-by shooting and watched somebody this kid die. And there was just bad stuff happening all around me. And it was one of those I have to just make a change. And I didn't know what, and I felt super stuck. And so God bless my family, because I came to them and was like, I'm going to drive west and find a place to
Until
live.
I can't drive west anymore.
Because, I was just kind of I'm going to drive across the country. Because at that point, I was I hadn't really left New York very often. New York is one of those weird places. I love it to death, and I love to visit it. But it's a weird, it has a gravitational pull when you're living there, because it's hard to remember that there's a world outside of it, because it's very all-consuming, and the energy is crazy all the time, And all of my friends live there and stuff. So it was kind of just if I wanted to move, but I didn't know where to move to. And so finally things got so bad that I just said, I'm going to hop in a car and go. And I'm seriously, in hindsight, I'm my family, what were you thinking? They were all so supportive, which I love. But I'm I'm not sure I would be that supportive if someone just turned to me and was I'm just going to flee my life right now. Is that cool? But they were good, go for it. My brother lived in he still does. He lives in California. And he was really nice. He and his wife were come to us at the end of it when you're done with your adventure. So I had a place to end up. And a cousin of mine was getting married in Portland. And so my plan was I was just going to drive around, get to Portland in time for the wedding, and then drive down to my brother's. And I think, he and his wife must have been kind of like, God, I hope she has a plan by then, because that was as far as my plan got. But I was determined to have a plan. And in all honesty, I'm pretty sure I was watching too much Gilmore Girls at the time. I think I thought I was going to find Stars Hollow. Like, I'm pretty sure I was like, if I just drive around, I'll find some magical small town. But I think I also realized I got to a lot of beautiful small towns. But I think what I realized was, as a city girl, I had like no idea how people functioned in a small town. Like, I was like, where would I get a job? Like, what would I do? It sounded really romantic in my head. And then in reality, I was like, I would know no one in this town, and this is a stupid plan, But when we were driving down, my best friend met up with me in Portland to drive down to my brother's with me, and we had this great trip. And I actually decided to move to San Francisco before we even got to San Francisco, because we drove through wine country, and I was just so smitten with wine country. And I was like, it's so beautiful, and I may have had too much wine. And and I remember asking the bartender person at the wine, or whatever they called them at the wine places, and I was like, if I moved to San Francisco, could I come here whenever I want? And he was like, yeah, you could come here. And I was like, I think I'm going to move to San Francisco. And then, I knew some people in San Francisco, like a friend of a friend, and I had, it felt a little bit, and it felt easier to go to San Francisco than a small town after being in New York for so long. I was kind of like, well, I know how to function in a city, like I get how this works, and I know how rent works,
Mm-hmm.
So luckily I came up with a plan, and that's how I ended up in San Francisco.
Straight to the sports desk.
Right? I did not realize how hard it would be to get a job in San Francisco, but that's secondary.
Yes.
I managed.
And then you evolved your writing. Well, you still write romance novels.
I do, yeah.
Okay.
I've slowed down on the releasing of those. I no longer, I'm no longer aiming to get like 400. I had like 200 out. Now I've slowed down on the output, but I still do release some under the Maggie Dallen name, and then I also have like another couple pen names that I feed, and I still enjoy it. But I've discovered screenwriting about like 4 years ago, and God, I'm really bad with years. I'm like, I don't know. All together. Like 3 years ago, 7 years ago, I don't know.
Post-COVID, what is a year?
I know. It was just
right?
like one long year there that so I discovered screenwriting. So since then, I still kind of feed my readers and do that, but I've definitely become more smitten with screenwriting than novel writing at this point. I think just because it's a new challenge,
Yeah.
I've kind of done what I can do in the novel world,
Yeah. You've done a lot.
Yeah.
I imagine your writing space. If I were a writer, I would be one of those crazy scientist writers, I think.
Oh, yeah?
With like 1,000 Post-it notes all over my walls that are color-coded for different
You mean that's
character
not
traits.
what your desk looks
And-
like at work already?
Throwing me under the bus, right?
Well.
There would be far more organization if I was a writer, a true writer.
Oh.
And then I would crime like yarn
Oh, would you?
things together.
That's what we're missing at
yeah,
work.
That's it.
The yarn.
I need yarn.
Uh-huh.
You need a murder board.
That's
at
exactly
work.
right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I know there's a
Murder
whole bunch of different processes to get to a book or get to a plot,
Yeah.
or character development sometimes come first, or plot comes first. And walk us through your process.
It's always different. Like every time I think it's kind of different. I do, over the last few years, I've started doing a lot more collaborating with people. So I do a lot of co-writing, and that always looks different. Like sometimes I have one whole pen name where my co-writer, she writes these incredibly detailed outlines, and and then she does. She's really into it, so she puts together like character dossiers, like for all of the
Wow.
characters, and just builds out this whole world, which is the kind of stuff that I don't like to take the time to do. If I have an idea, I jump right in, and I don't do all this planning. So she does this incredible job of like plotting things out and making sure all the details are there, and then I go through, and then I get to just have fun. So we always like compare, like who has the better job here? Because I'm like, I think mine's the fun part. And
that's
she's like, no, I think mine's the fun part, but. So with that style, like I just get to jump in. And what I love about that is I don't have to think things through as far as the plot and stuff. So I can just take a chapter and just like, how funny can I make this banter? You know, like how much fun can I have with the description here? Like and so I get to like just dive deep into the actual story and not worry about what's going to happen next in the plot and who did, you know, how am I going to reveal this and whatever, because she's done a lot of the thinking for me. So I get to do just like the real writing. If I'm doing something on my own, it's kind of a mix. Like I said, I tend to just like dive in, but then I hit a point about 20% in where I'm like, wait a second, what's happening?
Where was I going with this?
Yeah. That happens like every time. I get so excited by the opening. I'll get like, oh, I love this opening scene. But then it's like, oh, wait, you forgot to think through this thing called plot, you know? So then I have to press pause and start like really thinking about it. And sometimes I have to go back and rewrite and whatever. But yeah, so I think, you know, I first started off with like one style and my styles have just like changed, and it really depends. You know, people are always like, how do you get an idea? But I'm like, it depends. Like one time it actually started with I just knew the opening line. One time it started with a character. You know, sometimes it starts with like a fully formed, you know, sometimes there's like these magic ones where you're just like, oh, I have like the whole idea in my head. And then trying to put it down on paper is the hard part because you're like, it's so good up here, you know, and like
I wrestle with that too.
Yeah, that's the hard part. And sometimes you get it and sometimes you don't. Sometimes it takes like multiple attempts, but yeah, I don't know. I think that's when like I take a lot of classes still, especially that's been the nice thing with screenwriting for me is that I've started taking a lot of classes again, and it's been good for me. I feel like screenwriting has been helping my novel writing just because it's kind of made me go back to the fundamentals of writing, you know, and
to
structure.
Flex different muscles.
Yeah,
sort of,
exactly. And go in different directions and try different things. And it's made me look at my descriptions in different ways. I've been working with all these mentors who've been great. And one of them, he's now become like a voice in the back of my head because I told him to be harsh with me. I was like, I want you to unbreak me of all my bad habits. And he did. But now every time I go through an edit, I could just hear his voice in the back of my head because he had this thing being like, he was like, you write like a writer. Stop writing like a writer. And it's true. Like I get what he means because I think there's some rules that you learn when you first start. And then what you get to a certain point where you have to start learning how to break those rules. You know what I mean? And I'm looking at you both. I'm like, you know what I mean? And then you're like, no.
No, I feel like I kind of do. I feel
Okay.
like you probably kind of do too, right? Because we're both creative people.
Definitely. Yeah.
It's the same. Like I feel like as a musician and a songwriter, same thing. Like
Yeah.
we have all of the rules. We're taught all of the
Right.
rules.
And at
But
some
you
point, you
can't-
have to break out of the rules
Exactly.
to do something.
Yeah.
If you want to do something original, you have to break the rules. But I think that's the hard part because I think when you first start, everyone wants to break the rules right away because you want to be
Right.
so original. And
Right.
it's like, no,
Overcorrection.
you have to really
You
learn.
do have to learn.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you have to
within the
learn all
rules.
those rules. But then you can start breaking them and, you know, do interesting things, you know.
I think just the other day I said to our graphic designer at the store, I was like, I can't wait to just rip the MSU graphic design school right out of your
Yeah.
mind.
Yes, exactly.
She's
exactly.
like too good.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly
But
it.
the real world isn't like you've got to be flexible and you've got to be nimble and you've got to,
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
you've got to be real reactive and keep all of those rules in mind
yeah.
as you're doing all of these, like, moving.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what he's been helping me to break those rules, which has been interesting. And I think I'm a better writer for it. I know it, but it's always like a pain in that learning curve. You know, there's always a little not pain, but discomfort in learning curves. But also
That's where your growth comes from.
Yes,
though,
exactly.
Oftentimes.
It's the only way to get better is to go through those curves. So
Yeah, no one likes to though.
yeah,
It's
I know.
difficult.
I know. I'm trying to go through these phases right now where I'm like, I'll take a class, but then I have to give myself breathers afterwards to kind of just like, there's only so much input you can get. And then it's like, okay, now I'm just going to,
Digest.
sit with that for a little while and then I'll go back to learning and whatever. But let's just be comfortable. One of my co-writers and I are just like, can we just be bored for like a month? I just want to be bored. Like, what does that feel like again, you know? Sometimes I miss being bored. But
So your screenwriting
Yeah.
is would you say it's primarily what you're doing now?
it is, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the income is primarily from the book business, but so I'm still feeding that. But most of my time, energy, and passion right now is with the screenwriting stuff, and not just Hallmarky stuff, as well as like passion projects that I've, that I'm finally started tackling. I feel like after how many years? Wait, 2002 to 20, whatever. So more than 20 years of
Oh, that
writing.
math, those years again. Dang it.
Damn those years. This whole thing called math has never been my forte. But yeah, I think after so many years, I'm finally kind of tackling some bigger things like outside of the classic formulaic romance world. So yeah, it's kind of been a nice mix of Hallmarky screenwriting, which I love just because it really feels like an extension of what I've been doing for the past 20 years. You know, it's like very similar, like the beats are the same, the structure is the same. It's just a different format and different way of storytelling. But then I'm also been working on some passion projects like with these mentors that I was talking about. I've been working on some projects that are a little bit more like, closer to my heart and a little bit more meaningful for me and not necessarily, and definitely breaking some of the rules. So I've been kind of trying to do both while also running the book business. So, it's a lot.
Juggling.
Yeah. It's a lot of
Making balloon
juggling.
animals and juggling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Luckily, no balloon animals are being made anymore.
I don't know. I think the world's lesser because of that. So you've got this, I don't know, a screen
Yeah, a script. Yeah, I have a
script.
script.
I guess
yes.
that's the
Or
word.
screenplay. Yeah.
A screenplay. How does that get into the hands of Hallmark? Of anyone at Hallmark?
Yeah.
Tell
Well,
me
that's the real hard part, I think.
Right.
That was a long, crazy story. So I started these classes around when COVID started. And I think about COVID time. I was like, I started taking classes, and one of them was a small group mentorship type thing with this woman who she's written a bunch of Hallmarky movies, and she liked my first one. While I was writing it, she reached out to me and was like, "I want to send this to producers when you're done." So she did, and that one was a YA Christmas movie. And so we got some really lovely responses to the writing, but there was a general consensus that it's much harder to sell. There's not nearly as big of a market for teen Christmas movies as there is for adults, just because there's very much fewer networks and streamers doing that. But meanwhile, everybody's doing the adult romance. Not even just Hallmark. It's like Hallmark and, Roku, Hulu, to Amazon. Everybody's now, even, Hot Frosty, Netflix is in on it. Like everybody is making these now. So there's a real big market there, and it's a hungry market. So for my next attempt, I was like, okay, now I'm going to try doing just like a straight up Hallmarky one. And it was actually, I adapted my friend's book. So once I decided to do this, I remembered that she put out this book, and I remember reading the blurb being like, oh, that would make a great Hallmark movie. And so as soon as I got the idea in my head, I was like, I know what I want to do. So I reached out to her. Her name's Anne-Marie Meyer. And I was like, hey, I just started these classes. Do you mind if I take a crack at your book? And she was like, yeah, go for it. Have at it. So I was like, okay. So and so once I had that one done, I started pitching it, and we actually got some traction. We were starting to get all these, people were interested, they liked it, and there was traction. And then the strikes happened.
Oh, right.
So I feel like there's a common theme here. There's a lot of, it was always close calls. And the strike happened, so that put pause on everything. But before the strike happened, this producer I'd been working with had reached out to this director. Her name's Christy Wilwolf, and she's done so many of these kind of movies, and she's really well respected in the industry, in that world, the Hallmarky world. And she liked the script and had agreed to direct it. And then the strike happened, and then we all just went our separate ways. I started taking more classes, whatever. So a year and a half goes by, about a year and a half. And we're trying to regain some traction on that script. We're trying to say, you're basically back at square one because everyone had moved on with their life, so
But you have that nugget of hope.
Yeah,
from back
you
in the
still
day.
have that hope. 3 years later, you're still holding on. So so we started sending it. We were still sending it out again and again and again. We had another couple close calls. And then out of the blue, I get a call from Christy Wilwolf, this director, which I still laugh now because I'm like, how did you even get my number? Where did you, and who calls people like that? You know what I mean? I was just like, hello? So she reached out and she was like, look, I've got these two Hallmark stars. It was Megan Ory and John Reardon, and they're married in real life. And they really want to work on a Christmas movie this year together, but we're having a hard time finding they don't want to do just any script. They want one that they both like and can get behind and get excited about because they'd both been away from Hallmark for a little bit. Her because she'd had kids, and he was on this TV show called Hudson and Rex. And this was their big splash coming back to Hallmark Christmas movies, a special, and working together and the whole deal. And so she's like, we're having a hard time finding the script, but I sent them they passed on 3 of them, but I remembered yours. I sent it to them. They like it. is it available? And I was like, it is. And she's like, great. We have to start filming in like 4 weeks because by that point the clock was running out on his availability before he had to get back to filming this show. And so, yeah, it was intense. It was like suddenly,
Everything has to go immediately.
yeah. And they were like, "Look," but I wasn't allowed to do anything until I was the one who holds the final draft file, which is like, that's the software that you write the scripts in. And so I'm the holder of that. And it was such a stressful time for me because I was like stuck in the middle because there's a guy on the ground who they need that file in order to get the location, the location scouting and the wardrobes and like everything moving. And meanwhile, my lawyer's like, don't send anyone anything until all of the you know what I mean? So it was just kind of like,
signed first.
yeah. So everyone was moving super fast to try to get all of the, everything signed, sealed, and delivered. And, but, things, I'm sure everyone knows how the world of lawyers works. And, so we're all just kind of like, hurry. But yeah, they got it up and running super quickly. And we got to fly out. And that was the coolest thing ever, being on set and hearing words that I'd written. Like, it was just so bizarre. It was like,
That's
oh my
the
God.
thing.
That's so cool.
You put words on paper, you put words on a screen, and then they come to life. Tell me what that feels like.
I don't even think there's words for it. It was bizarre at first, especially because, I walked in. So they'd been filming for like a week before we managed to get there because it was all very fast. And we show up and they had actually put a sign out front. So the name of the inn in the movie is the North Pole. And so there's like a sign that's like, welcome to the North Pole. And I walk in and had been transformed into this, like the inn that I'd written in the thing. And so it was like legit, it was so trippy. It was like a fever dream, just like,
like my imagination has come to life.
It was
my
so
brain
weird.
is outside of my brain.
It was so bizarre. It was like, so it was a very weird feeling. And I feel like every step along the way was kind of like a weird feeling for some reason or another, getting the call that like, okay, everything's signed. It's definitely happening. And there was all kinds of moments that were a little bit like out of body experiences throughout the whole process.
Nice.
And then watching it on TV was a whole other level of like, well, is this like, are we all watching this or is this in my head right now? You know what I mean? It was bizarre. And then I actually got to go speak at this class that I've been talking about, this school. It's called Story Summit. But it all started with them. And then I got to go back. I watched so it all started with a class that I took about how to write Hallmark movies from this Story Summit school. And then I got asked to speak like 4 years later. And it was just so bizarre to be like in the same class, listening to some of the same kind of like lectures, but then being one of the speakers, being like, I'm now one of the people who gets to like be an expert. Yeah, it was. So yeah, I feel like it was a very like full circle kind of thing. I was like, oh my God, 4 years later. And I'm like, yeah, it was cool.
I can't even relate to that.
No, that's so cool. My mind is blown. I think that's amazing.
I have to look this up on my phone. In transparency, full transparency, I haven't watched the ove.
Oh no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
That's
totally
it.
kidding.
That's a cut. We're done.
I'm out of here.
But our bookkeeper at the store is a Hallmark movie connoisseur.
Oh.
And I've known this, that she's worked with us since day one. So for 8 years, every November, whenever everything's
the countdown
released.
to Christmas. Yeah.
She's got the like 30-day. She is a Hallmark.
She's on it
from day one.
I love that.
And I told her that we were going to talk to you.
Yes.
And then I said, Ryan, would you please do me a favor and write a review? And I'm gonna read this to the author of your Hallmark film. So this is I'm putting you on the spot here.
I know, like, oh dear.
Okay, so I'm gonna read this short little. Believe in Christmas. It leans into the Hallmark movie stereotypes because even though most viewers, and this movie pokes a little fun at the perfect Christmas, we all would actually love to have one. I know I would. Otherwise, we wouldn't be watching. Believe in Christmas is funny. You don't see many jokes about serial killers on Hallmark. Funny enough that I've laughed out loud so many times.
Nice.
I've sat through hundreds of these movies, and there are a handful that I watch every single year. This is going to be on that list. I'll be very disappointed if it does not air again next year.
Oh my gosh,
that is so sweet.
That is a great review.
Isn't it amazing?
Oh my gosh, that is so kind. Can you tell her thank you for me?
Yeah, absolutely.
That is so sweet. That is so nice.
So something like that, how does that, like, your work has, it's like you work. Like
Yeah.
writing and creating
Yeah.
these things is not easy.
No, yeah, it's not.
And you've got to
That's for
have a
sure.
whole lot of talent. And to have something like that and something like your work come to fruition, how does that feel?
I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I think that's why all artists do what we do, right? Of any kind, writing, art, like music, it doesn't matter. I think everyone does it to like affect somebody else in some way. And have some kind of emotional impact on somebody. So I'm like, that's it. That's exactly why I did this. Like, that's why I'm working for so many years to do that kind of thing.
Mhm.
It's incredible. It's really, really amazing. I think, yeah. And I mean, it's not for like, I probably shouldn't put it that way. It's not the like good reviews that we do it for. It's the emotional impact that we do it for. I think there's a big difference there. Where it's like, I don't, but yeah, it's like you want to impact somebody emotionally in some way. And that's what it is. And that's why I used to get so frustrated when people are like, when I went through those 15 years of not selling a single thing and not sharing anything with the world in any way. People are like, well, you just write for the love of writing. And I'm like, we do, but it is not a one-sided thing. Maybe it is for some people, but for me, writing has never been a one-sided thing. There's a dual nature to it where it's like you are writing something for somebody else to read and absorb. It's a share. You're sharing something with somebody else and creating a world for somebody else to live in, not just like for yourself. So that's why like that kind of thing. I'm like, yes, that's why we do it, so that somebody else have like laughs and smiles, not just me. I can make myself laugh all day on my couch, but I'm like I entertain myself all the time, but that's not nearly as satisfying as being able to make somebody else laugh and smile and feel good for like 90 minutes. It's like might not last long, but at least
Escapism is so necessary.
It's the best. I love escapism. I'm all for it.
Well, what you say kind of reminds me, I think, Katie, you said that when we were talking with Ben on his podcast.
What did I say?
Just how like
God only knows.
yeah.
We're very wise. Just take it.
Yes, it was wisdom.
It was something along the lines of yes, this should be fun, but it is also work.
Right.
Like, it's your career.
Yeah.
But you also work within a field of like creating these emotions in others. So it should be that. It should be fun and it should be purposeful and thoughtful and beautiful and joyful.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like it's work.
Yeah, it definitely is work. It's work to get the craft right so that you can get those things across. You know what I mean? I think that's the hard part is because it's like that's where the real work comes in. Because if you just want to write for yourself, there's nothing wrong with that. I think I fully appreciate, a lot of people just like to write for the writing's sake, and that's beautiful. But I think if you want to write and affect someone else, that's when you have to actually get good at it. And you have to learn the skills and the craft. And I'm sure it's the same thing with music or whatever, because it's like, but if you want to actually get across to somebody else's world, you have to be good enough that they enter into it willingly and that they, set aside their doubts. It's such a bizarre thing. I was reading some book about this goes for all art, but with writing in general. And this guy was talking about how really it's like a form of hypnosis that you're putting people into. And it's the same thing with movies and whatever, but people enter into the movie theater and sit down and you're just letting yourself go into this world. And with books, it's like, you just let they're opening a book and then magically basically going into a state of hypnosis that you are controlling. And you like, if you do it right, they are fully engrossed in it and living in this world, and you have like so much power in the book was like in a positive way, obviously, not a like wah, you have so much power, brainwash them. But I think there's like that's kind of a beautiful thing, right? That you're taking part in it's like a co-creation. I think that's the one thing that I've always loved about books. And also with screenwriting, but with books in particular, it's such a co-creation with the person who's reading, because how you imagine that scene that I wrote is going to be different than how I imagine it or how anyone else imagines it. It's so kind of like a weird co-creation thing going on, because it's like your imagination is also at play trying to call up. I could do my best to tell you what the hero looks like, but you're going to still have your own image in your head and you're going to have your own emotions that you bring to it. And so I don't know. I think that I've always found that kind of fascinating. It's like an alchemy of some sort, with it. And then with screenwriting, it goes even further because then you're collaborating with all these other people. So it's such a co-creation going on. Like, I wrote I adapted a book. So it was like the book, the author had her fingerprint on it. And then I adapted it. And a lot of the dialogue was me because I had to reshape the story to fit And then the director also had some changes that she wanted, just because she had her sense of humor that she wanted to put in there, and then there were notes came in from the actor and the actress of ways that they wanted to personalize it to fit them, because they had their ways of doing it. And I was like, it's so beautiful at the end of the day, especially when we were on set and the author was there too, and she turned to me and she's like, "Did you write that or did I? Or did Christy, the director?" And I'm like, "I have no idea." But it's great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, it's kind of cool to be part of something that so many people are like molding to put themselves into it. And yeah. Anyway, sorry. I could go on
that's
forever about these
amazing.
topics. I'm like,
Yeah.
don't get me started on hypnosis, because I will just go on about it.
Booknosis?
Yeah, booknosis is what I'm going to start calling it. Yes.
I love that. We are supported by Steele's Furniture and Appliance. John, this seems insane, but do our notes say they've been in business for 94 years?
That is 100% correct. And hey, kudos to our crackpot team of factoid checkers. Yeah, Steele's is a 4th generation business located right here in Butte. They're selling just about everything you need for every room of your house. So Serta, Beauty Rest mattresses for the bedroom, Maytag and Amana, KitchenAid kitchen appliances, Lazy Boy and Stanton and Ashley furniture, all sold industry-leading products. I'm sure I'm missing a bunch, but to anybody out there, just know that Steele's is literally like the largest furniture and appliance warehouse in the area.
And the one thing that they offer that sometimes gets overlooked is their home accents and seasonal items. Those are the real pops of personality that make a house truly your own.
I daydream about getting home every day after work and sitting down for the rest of time on my beautiful sectional couch that I got from Steele's. That's literally one of my favorite grown-up purchases I think I've ever made.
Steele's Furniture, how can you not love a business that's been around longer than, I don't know, the television?
Like the old picture box?
Shop online at steelsfurniture.com, or better yet, head on over to 800 South Wyoming Street in Butte, Montana. We are proudly supported by the Covalite Theater. The Covalite Theater is where all the cool kids are hanging out these days, I hear, John.
Uptown Butte.
Uptown Butte. It's at 215 West Broadway. Little address, plug it into your Google Maps, and head there basically any night of the week to catch all sorts of stuff. Like,
The Covalite's like the crossroads of the art culture right now.
100%. I mean, there's nothing else like it happening in Butte right now.
2 theaters inside of that old church.
You have two venues for the price of one, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they've got it all going on there. They've got open mic. They've got all sorts of other events you can catch. Comedy, film, dance lessons, vaudeville, burlesque, workshops like drink and draw.
Oh, drink and draw is always fun. You've got to go to it.
It's
if you
so
have the
fun.
chance.
It's so fun. You drink and you draw, and that's basically it, but it's great.
It's a win for everybody.
It's a win for everybody. You can rent their space for private events. And I mean, mostly you can just go boogie to some awesome live music.
Yeah, the Covalite's doing a great job.
So head to the Covalite Theater at 215 West Broadway in Butte, Montana. You can check out their complete event listing and get tickets for upcoming shows at covalitepresents.org.
Katie, one address for you. 146 West Park Street. Tell me what you know about that corner.
It's the corner.
It's the corner.
I'm not great at geography, John.
It's also not geography.
Oh, God.
That is Montana and Park Street, right where Taco del Sol is. We are supported by Taco del Sol. Ugh, and that burrito bowl, give it to me.
Okay, John, but I'm a pita pit girl.
That's not geography either.
Well, you're right. I don't know what it is. But we're also supported by Pita Pit.
Pita Pit's so good. Ugh. Why are we so lucky with these restaurants uptown?
I don't know, but those 2 spots are like my go-to for lunch in town. It's quick, it's fresh, it's delish.
I mean, my hack is that burrito bowl.
No,
Right.
I mean, I am a big fan of the burrito bowl. And did you know that the Taco del Sol in Butte actually has some stuff that the other Taco del Sols in like Montana don't have? Because there are other ones in Montana, but you can only get like the mango salsa and the Southwest barbecue sauce, like here in Butte. Those are things specific to the Butte location, which I think is so cool.
Really? I'm a
Yeah.
mango salsa guy. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's just a Butte thing, so you got to come to the Butte Taco del Sol. And I've been a pita pit fan forever.
Ugh, the falafel pita.
That is my go-to. I'm not even joking. That is what I
Yes.
get. It's so good. It's just when I'm craving just a quick, delicious, healthy lunch, I'm just waltzing into pita pit. And it's always so quick that
I mean, here's the thing. We're all busy, right? And
Yes.
so it's hard to get like quick, good, healthy, fresh food. Pita Pit, Taco del Sol, hand in hand
oh yeah,
with awesome.
it meets all kinds of needs. You're not in the mood for one, you're definitely going to be in the mood for the other.
Yeah.
They've got bowls, salads, wraps, tacos, burritos. I mean, across everything.
And smiles.
And smiled. I mean, everybody that works there is so great.
Yeah.
And
Golly.
I just will eat some queso, even though that's naughty for me, but I love it.
Taco del Sol. Do you remember that geography lesson we had earlier? 146 West Park Street in Uptown. It's on the corner of Montana and Park Street.
And Pita Pit is right next door at 140 West
Ooh.
Park Street.
I can get on board with that.
140, 146 West Park, right on the corner. Stop in, tell them you said hey,
And just eat it all up.
enjoy.
That was one of the things I'm curious about because you were on the front end of this Hallmark movie or the back end. I'm not sure, whatever
I don't
the
know.
origination is.
Yeah, the starting point. Yes, yeah.
And so when you watch that, the final product on TV, how much, I mean, were you disappointed in any of it? How well did they pull that from your head?
Yeah, I think
And-
they did a great job. And most of it, because I got to go on set, I didn't realize until afterwards that they don't always let screenwriters go on set. So I feel very lucky that I got to do that, especially with my first attempt at this, So I feel like that was really awesome. And not only that, but the director / producer, Christy Wolf, who she was so lovely from the very beginning. And she was talking through all the changes that they did make between, she explained to me well, we changed this because we had access to this location. There's so many logistics to it that when you're sitting, I do most of my writing just on a couch on my laptop. And when you're sitting there, it's you can only plan so much because then there's just the logistics of filming, and so they had access to a cabin. So they ended up changing one of the locations from whatever, I don't even remember what it was originally, to a cabin and things like that. But I feel like I was very lucky because they don't have to explain anything to me. They didn't have to tell me. I talked to a screenwriter mentor who was telling me about how she once sold a script, didn't hear anything from them, and didn't even know that it released until someone called her up to be so you can just be, as a screenwriter, you're kind of the lowest man on the totem pole when it comes to the actual film being made, because they, and then I've heard other stories too, though, where the screenwriter's on set and actually gets to have, changing the dialogue as they go and, really integral. But there's all kinds of ways people can be involved or not involved. So it was really nice of them to explain that stuff. So at the end of the day, I wasn't surprised by anything. I was happy with the way it turned out because but I think it helped that I know why some things were changed.
that's
And, so it was kind of awesome to be a part of that process and, not that I had a say necessarily, but be able to be included in the conversation. So,
And I always have the crazy thoughts of worlds inside of my own head. And I would I can't even imagine walking down the street and being in it.
right.
Yeah.
It's
3
bizarre.
dimensions, 4
Yes.
dimensions. And it's just that
Yeah.
would blow my absolute mind.
Yeah, it'd be a trip.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a little nuts, and I'm hoping it'll happen again. I don't know. We've got shopping agreements, which is kind of the very, very, very first step, a million miles away from an agreement. But for 2 that are out right now, and then we're pitching, a co-writer and I are pitching a couple others. So yeah, fingers crossed that it will be the first of.
And you're staying in the Hallmark genre?
For now, yeah, I've been working on some passion project scripts as well. And one of them is kind of gaining a little bit of traction. But for now, I feel like the practical part of me, the part of me that was, ghostwriting, will write whatever anyone tells me to do, is just I think Hallmark, that kind of world is a good fit for me right now to learn and grow and figure out what I'm doing. Because as I said before, it is such a natural extension for me of writing. So it feels very familiar in a lot of ways. And I enjoy it still. So, I'm happy to be doing that for a while and still plugging away at some of those passion projects on the side. But
Do you think do you feel a connection to your former theater self?
yeah, it's funny because I for the years used to laugh when I was writing and having all these day jobs and whatever. And I used to mock myself for having a theater degree because I was like, well, look at me using my theater degree,
Right.
as I had like a executive assistant job or whatever. It was like, writing on the side, not doing anything with my theater degree. But then it was funny because I got asked to teach a class on young adult voice in particular. It was a writing conference going on. And this was during COVID because it was a like webinar type setup, right? So I had to film the classes ahead of time and then people could watch the videos. And so I did this entire class on how to write in YA voice and what YA voice is and blah, blah, blah. And a friend of mine who I've known forever, she's been a friend since high school, she very nicely offered to edit and help me with the video and transcript kind of stuff or whatever that go with the class. And so I asked her afterwards, I was like, did that make any sense to you? I've never had to talk to somebody about writing voice and all that stuff. And I was like, did that make any sense? She's like, it did. But I was definitely reminded of your theater background. I kind of forgot that you were in the theater until I heard that. And I was like, oh man, I forgot, wow, yeah, I can see the theater influence. And I had a moment where I was staring at her like, what are you talking about? And then I went back and looked at the transcript of what I had said and I was like, oh my God, theater has hugely impacted me. And I didn't even realize it because, but I think when it comes down to voice and character and being able to tap into that stuff, I think I just took it for granted all the years of that theater background of doing those exercises and getting into character. Because honestly, when I sit down to write, I do it all in either first person or very close third, which means you're basically right over the character's shoulder. And I'm enter into the character when I'm writing, that's what voice is, where you're writing from that presence. And so, yeah. But it was kind of funny what a shock it was to me. I was like, oh my God, I am using my theater degree. I can't believe it. All these years later. And then, yeah, being on set and watching that, I was just like, oh my God, the theater lover in me would be freaking out right now that we're on a movie set,
Right.
just that's kind of how it all started. So it was another full circle kind of moment where I'm granted, when I went to college for a theater degree, I think I thought I was going to be a star be in front of the camera, which obviously did not work out. But this is even better. Honestly, I think that's the one thing I learned about myself in college was theater is great. Acting is awesome. I love it. But I think what's even better is being all the characters,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was cool to be one character. But then when I started writing, I think I really realized that I could create the entire world and the script and be all of the characters and get to play all the parts and never leave my couch while doing it, So,
In your sweatpants.
yeah, exactly.
The best ever.
Exactly.
Oh, that's so fun. Isn't this cool?
I just have been at a loss for word. I mean, clearly I'm not chatty at all. I'm just my mouth is, I'm
That's
this is so cool.
I'm sucking all the air out of the room.
No,
I could talk
you're
forever about this.
You're
stuff.
like a celebrity. I'm just like sitting here hanging on everything you're saying. I'm like, yes, this is so cool.
I think I would be amazed at they're making the snow. That's from my script that I had these people talk about. Now
No,
they're
I'd be
doing
like a 4-year-old in there. I'd just be like,
Yeah.
just looking around. I would not be able
I
to
would
keep
run
my
up
shit
and down
together.
the streets, just frolicking in my own world I created.
Well,
Yeah.
that's why you said you wanted some pictures for the whatever, and I'm afraid to send them to you because literally everyone, I'm making this face with no one if you're listening to this kid, but I was just
Just so
look at the
I
biggest
know.
smile. It's I
that is
look a little bit
amazing.
insane in every picture because I'm
that's-
like a child in Disney World or something. You know what I mean? I'm just
Yeah.
what is she doing? I'm like, oh,
No,
couldn't I have had one picture where I look cool?
No,
I'm
looking
acting
cool is overrated.
Yeah.
But no, not
Looking
a single
excited
one.
is way better.
Every single one. I'm this weird beaming grin. So I'm like, oh my God. Everyone who worked on the movie was probably like, who is this lady?
She's a crazy lady on the way, rummaging through our
Why
food
is
truck.
she smiling like that? It's so weird.
Oh my gosh, this is so cool. I guess you've got some other scripts in the works. I was
Yes.
gonna kind of I'm curious about what's next.
Well, here's hoping. So 2 of them are actually in the hands of some networks right now that are reviewing them. And they're again, the Christmassy Hallmark type scripts. And then I've got a couple that are, I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to say about them, but
we don't want to
things are happening.
This is a trajectory that kind of once your foot is in the door, it feels like you've got connections to continue.
I hope so. I hope so. I'm afraid to even like jinx myself by saying like that's how it works, but it's definitely been. I've definitely noticed a momentum shift since I like announced the movie, and then since the movie came out, I feel like it's definitely been getting some nice attention from people and hearing from producers and getting a lot of making some good connections. So even if it's not for next year's Christmas lineup or whatever, I'm hoping that this only leads to more good things here. So
that's exciting.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping. We'll see.
That's incredibly
I'm going to keep plugging away. And in the meantime, I just keep writing my romance novels as well. So
just teens making out.
Just kissing in teens. That's what I do over here. That's all that's happening.
Oh, no, this is great. One of the questions that I ask everybody on the show is that you're putting your fingerprints all over the world. Right. In terms of entertainment and escapism and joy and romance and love. And I think that's amazing and really admirable. Like the work you do is really cool. In 100 years into the future, when people look back at your work, what do you think that they would say?
Well, I honestly just hope that it still makes people smile. I hope it's still making one person happy at one point in time. That's the best I could ask for. It's a little bit of escapism. That's it.
Love is pretty universal.
Right? I think so.
Timeless.
It gives people some warm, fuzzy feels. I think that it has a really good effect. Honestly, like I know if I'm reading a book where I'm at the part where it makes me like really happy, I am in a better mood for like the whole day, and same thing, if I'm watching a TV show that I'm really into, like I was watching Ted Lasso recently and was like binge watching Ted Lasso, right? And like, I'm just walking around like as optimistic as Ted Lasso because it's like such you know what I mean? It's just like gets in your blood. And so, if I can make people smile like Ted Lasso made me smile for weeks on end, like I'll be a happy camper. I'll have achieved what I set out to achieve.
Well, you do that.
Oh, good.
Yeah, you legitimately. That's not blowing smoke at you. No. The work you do.
I hope so. My latest thing is the latest teen book that I put out, I actually felt like really passionate about, and it's still just a silly YA rom-com, but for the first time I had a heroine with like the same anxiety issues that I've had my whole life. And so that was just really meaningful for me. So I'd like to start doing more things like that and that's what I've been working on with these passion projects that have a little bit more of relatability as far as that kind of stuff goes. Because, I got one review recently from she was saying that her daughter had anxiety issues and how it helped her so much. And I was like, that right there is like, if I could help people who like are suffering in the way that I've like suffered for so long, but I've just it was like made me weep. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, I want to be putting more stuff like that out into the world. So that's where I'm putting my focus these days. Yeah.
That's meaningful.
Try. I'm like, if I can be, I actually have this author who I read sometimes when I'm going through a real anxious time, and I call her my author Xanax because she's like, I like they just make me feel calm and happy or whatever. And I'm like, if I could be that for somebody else, too, like that's a worthy goal right there,
100%.
So be somebody else's Xanax. There you go. Read my books, you'll feel happy for a minute.
So booknosis,
booknosis, yeah.
Like what book? Xanax.
Book Xanax.
I love it.
These are my goals.
I love it.
Perfect.
It's incredible.
For our listeners, how can they follow you, purchase books? All of that fun stuff.
I am everywhere as Maggie Dallen. So I think like Instagram is like author Maggie Dallen. TikTok, if that's still around next week, I don't even know what's happening there. But I think if you author Maggie Dallen on Amazon, I'm Maggie Dallen. There's hundreds of books to pick from there. So
yeah. Well, cool. We'll send people all in your direction.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks,
and
guys.
stay tuned to the Hallmark channel.
Yeah.
Now and
be
into
more.
the future.
Yes.
Yay. Hopefully there'll be a couple more a couple. Look at me aiming big. I'm like,
look at you. Hey, that's what
you have to say it. You have to say it.
Yeah.
It's out there.
Let's
putting it out
manifest
there.
some stuff.
Let's do it. Next Christmas. Even
I
more.
can't wait.
Well, thanks so much for sitting down with us. This is great.
Thank you so much.
Of all the places
Thanks so much for hanging out with us today. And a big thank you to our guest, author, screenplay writer, and retired princess reporter, Maggie Dallen. If you're a fan of the show, please don't forget to hit the follow and subscribe button on your favorite podcast app or over on our YouTube channel. And be sure to check out Of All the Places podcast on Facebook and Instagram. Of All the Places is produced by Morris Mountain Productions in partnership with 5518 Designs. Our theme song is made specifically for our show by your favorite power disco duo, Desperate Electric. For John and Ben, this is Katie. Thanks so much for listening to Season 2 of All the Places podcast.